During the Cold War, America was afraid of enemies, of bombs, of falling behind in science. But in that fear, something dark happened. Something buried beneath national security and research. The US government and private hospitals ran secret radiation experiments on their own citizens. They tested what radiation could do to the human body, not on soldiers or volunteers who understood the risks, but on the poor, the sick, the vulnerable, and many of them were Black. At hospitals across the country, patients were told they were getting treatment. They weren't told they were being injected with plutonium, or having radioactive materials placed near their organs, or being fed contaminated food. In some cases, children and pregnant women were used in experiments they never agreed to. One woman, a Black patient at a hospital in Cincinnati, thought she was being treated for cancer. Instead, doctors exposed her to deadly radiation doses as part of a government study. She died, never knowing the truth. The scientists said it was for knowledge. They said it was for national safety. But what they did was sacrifice people who were never meant to be soldiers. For decades, these experiments were hidden behind classified files and polite lies, until the 1990s when President Clinton finally ordered an investigation and the truth came out. Thousands of Americans were experimented on without their consent. Black patients, poor patients, veterans, children. The world was told it was science, but in truth it was betrayal. So when people ask why there's mistrust in medicine, this is why. Because history didn't happen in secret, it happened in hospitals. And the walls remember.
It's May 13th, 1862. The Civil War rages across America.
And in Charleston Harbor, a 23-year-old enslaved man named Robert Smalls is about to do something no one has ever dared. He works aboard a Confederate transport ship called the Planter, a vessel used to move weapons and supplies for the Confederate Army. But Robert has a plan for freedom. That night, the white officers leave the ship to sleep on land, trusting the enslaved crew to stay put. They had no idea what Robert was about to do. Before dawn, Robert puts on the captain's uniform and straw hat, imitating his voice perfectly. He signals to his fellow enslaved sailors, "It's time." They quietly fire up the ship's engines and sail straight toward the Confederate lines, with their wives and children hidden on board. One wrong move and they'd all be shot. As the ship approaches each checkpoint, Robert uses the captain's whistle codes. Flawless. The Confederate guards wave him through. Finally, as dawn breaks, they reach the edge of Confederate waters, the last signal post. Robert hoists a white bedsheet as a surrender flag. Union soldiers spot the strange sight, a Confederate ship flying white. When they board, Robert stands tall and says, "Good morning, sir. I brought you the Planters and her guns." He didn't just win his own freedom. He freed his entire crew and their families, and gave the Union a fully armed warship. Robert Smalls later became a U.S. congressman, fighting for education and civil rights. From slave to sea captain, from prisoner to politician. Robert Smalls didn't wait for freedom to find him. He sailed straight into it. Before Rosa Parks, there was a 15-year-old girl named Claudette Colvin. It was March 2nd, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama. Claudette had just left school, learning about freedom, equality, and the U.S. Constitution. But when she got on the bus that day, the world reminded her that her rights only existed on paper. The driver shouted, "Get up! Let that white woman sit." But Claudette stayed still. Her heart was racing. Her hands were shaking. And then she said something that changed history. "It's my constitutional right to sit here." She was dragged off that bus by police, handcuffed, screaming, and thrown into jail like a criminal for refusing to give up her seat. At just 15 years old, she became one of the first people arrested for challenging bus segregation, months before Rosa Parks. But Claudette's story was buried. Why? Because she was young, poor, and later became pregnant. And the civil rights leaders feared her story wouldn't be accepted by the media. So Rosa Parks, an older respected woman, later took that same brave stand, and history remembered her. But Claudette Colvin never forgot. She said, "All I wanted was equality and freedom. That's what I was fighting for." Today we remember Claudette, not as a footnote, but as a fire starter of a movement. Because sometimes history doesn't begin with the ones we remember, it begins with the ones we forget. The year was 1921. Airplanes were new, dangerous, and thrilling. But for a black woman in America, Becoming a pilot was impossible. Her name was Bessie Coleman. Born in Texas, one of 13 children, she picked cotton, worked in a barber shop, and saved every penny she could. But she had a dream bigger than the sky itself. When flight schools in the U.S. refused her because of her race and gender, Bessie didn't give up. She packed her bags and sailed to France, the only country that would teach her how to fly. She learned in a tiny biplane, with the wind cutting her face and the world below shrinking beneath her. And on June 15, 1921, Bessie Coleman became the first black woman in the world to earn a pilot's license. When she returned home, America couldn't believe it. She began performing air shows, spinning, looping, diving through the clouds. They called her Brave Bessie, but she didn't fly just for fame. She flew for every little black boy and girl who was told, "You can't." She said, "The air is the only place free from prejudice." Bessie dreamed of opening a flight school for black pilots, but in 1926, during a test flight, her plane malfunctioned. She fell and never got back up. But her dream didn't die, because every pilot of color who came after her, every woman who touched the sky flies with Bessie's wings. She proved that when the doors closed on Earth, you can still fly above it. It was the summer of 1919. World War I had ended. Black soldiers who fought for America's freedom returned home, proud, brave, and hopeful. But what they came home to wasn't freedom. They came home to hate. Across the United States, from Chicago to Washington, D.C., and from Arkansas to Omaha, racial tension exploded into violence. Whites feared that black veterans, trained, disciplined, and proud, would no longer know their place. So mobs attacked black neighborhoods. Homes were burned. Men and women were beaten. Entire communities went up in flames. The newspapers called it the Red Summer. Red, not for revolution, but for the blood that soaked the streets. In Chicago, it all started when a young black boy named Eugene Williams drifted too close to a white-only beach. He was stoned and drowned. And when police refused to arrest his killers, the city erupted for days. 38 people dead. Over 1,000 black families left homeless. But through the smoke and ashes, something changed. Black Americans began to fight back, not just with fists, but with unity and purpose. They formed community defense groups, demanded justice, and organized politically like never before. The Red Summer was a nightmare, but it also woke a generation that said, "We fought for America overseas, now we'll fight for freedom right here." The Red Summer didn't end in 1919. It ignited a new era of black resistance and pride. It was the painful birth of the modern civil rights movement. It was World War II and Europe was drowning in chaos. Soldiers fought in trenches, families waited at home. And in the middle of it all, millions of letters piled up undelivered. Letters from mothers, wives, and children. Messages of love, hope, and home, all lost in dusty warehouses. Morale was falling. The troops were losing faith. Then came a group of women who changed everything. They were the 6888th Central Postal Directory Battalion, the only all-black, all-female unit to serve overseas during the war. They called them the 6888, led by Major Charity Adams. These women were sent to England and France to fix the impossible, a mountain of mail that reached 17 million letters high. When they arrived, the warehouses were freezing, rat-infested, and filled with chaos. The military told them it would take 6 months to organize it. They did it in 3. They worked around the clock all day, all night in shifts, sorting, reading, rerouting, and rebuilding hope letter by letter. Their motto was, "No mail, no nothing," and they were right. Because those letters weren't just paper, they were life for soldiers far from home. But even as they served their country, they faced racism and sexism from within the military. Still, they stood tall. Polished boots, perfect uniforms, unbreakable spirits. When they marched, heads turned. When they worked, hearts lifted. They didn't carry guns, and they carried hope. And when the war ended, the world almost forgot them. But history remembers now. Because the 6888 didn't just deliver letters, they delivered dignity, pride, and proof that black women could do anything. Imagine being just 11 years old and waking up one day to find out you're a millionaire. Sounds like a fairy tale, right? But for one little black girl in 1913 America, it was real. Her name was Sarah Rector, and she became one of the wealthiest children in the country. during a time when most black families could not even dream of equality, let alone wealth. This is the story that textbooks barely mention. A story about luck, injustice, and power, and how one girl's fortune changed everything. Sarah Rector was born in 1902 in Indian Territory, what's now Oklahoma. Her parents, Joseph and Rose Rector, were descendants of enslaved Africans who had been owned by members of the Creek Nation, one of the Native American tribes who themselves owned enslaved people. After the Civil War, the U.S. government signed treaties that freed enslaved people held by Native tribes and granted them land. Each formerly enslaved person, called a freedman, received land allotments, usually 160 acres per person. So the Rector family, including little Sarah, received their piece of land. But there was a catch. Sarah's land wasn't rich farmland or near a town. It was rocky, dry, and nearly useless. Not good for crops or cattle. It was considered so worthless that her father tried to sell it, but couldn't find a buyer. All they could do was lease it to an oil company, hoping to earn a few dollars a year. Then everything changed. In 1913, an oil driller named B.B. Jones, working on Sarah's leased land, struck oil, and not just a little bit. He hit a massive gusher that began pumping out 2,500 barrels a day. Overnight, this worthless land became one of the most productive oil sites in Oklahoma. And because the lease was in Sarah's name, all that oil money started going directly to her. To put that into perspective, in today's money, she was making thousands of dollars a day. Back then, people couldn't believe it. Newspapers called her the richest colored girl in the world. She was just 11 years old, but not everyone was happy for her. Because Sarah was a child, and because she was black, the state of Oklahoma assigned her a white guardian to manage her wealth. This was part of a system designed to keep control in white hands. Many black landowners, especially minors, were declared incompetent to handle their own finances. Even when they were educated or had responsible families, Sarah's white guardian controlled her money, her property, and even parts of her life. And when the media heard about this black oil girl, they went wild. Rumors spread that Sarah had been kidnapped, or that her family was being mistreated. Some even claimed she was missing. The situation got so chaotic that the NAACP and Booker T. Washington himself got involved to investigate. When they found her, Sarah was safe, living comfortably and attending school. But the scandal revealed just how easily black wealth was exploited and controlled during that time. As Sarah grew up, she started to take control of her finances and her future. She invested in real estate, started businesses, and even helped others in her community. By her teenage years, Sarah Rector owned over 2,000 acres of prime land, several rental homes, and even a car dealership, something unheard of for a black woman in the early 1900s. She eventually moved to Kansas City, Missouri, where she lived in a mansion known as the Rector Mansion, a stunning brick home with chandeliers, a library, and a grand staircase. She hosted famous guests and enjoyed a life most people could only dream of. But she never forgot her roots. Despite her wealth, she remained grounded, charitable, and proud of who she was. Sarah Rector's fortune lasted well into her adulthood, though like many people during the Great Depression, she lost some of her wealth. Still, she lived comfortably and raised 3 sons. She passed away in 1967, at the age of 65, when a woman who had seen both poverty and unimaginable wealth and survived a system that tried to control her. But her story didn't make it into most history books. Her name faded, her mansion was sold, and her legacy was nearly forgotten. Sarah Rector's story isn't just about money, it's about possibility. She was born into a world that told her she had nothing, and she proved them wrong. Her story reveals how easily black success was erased from history and why remembering it matters today. Because Sarah Rector showed the world that even when the odds are stacked against you, even when the system is built to keep you down, you can still rise. She wasn't just the richest black girl in America. She was a symbol of resilience, brilliance, and faith. And now her story finally gets to shine again. In 1917, when America entered World War I, a group of black soldiers from New York volunteered to serve. They were proud, disciplined, and ready to fight for their country. But their country wasn't ready to fight for them. They were known as the Harlem Hellfighters, the 369th Infantry Regiment, an all-black unit in a segregated army. When they arrived in Europe, white American soldiers refused to fight beside them. So the US Army handed them over to the French, who didn't share America's racist rules. And that's when the legend began. The Harlem Hellfighters were placed directly on the front lines. No breaks, no rest, no rotation. For 191 days straight, they fought harder and longer than any other American unit in the war. They faced machine guns, poison gas, and endless bombardments, but they never broke, never surrendered. The Germans began to fear them. They called them the Hellfighters, because no matter what they threw at them, these men just kept coming. Among them were two men who became living legends, Private Henry Johnson and Private Needham Roberts. One night, while guarding a trench, they were attacked by a German raiding party. Outnumbered, outgunned, and wounded, they fought back with bare hands, knives, and rifles. Henry Johnson was shot multiple times, but he refused to fall. When his gun jammed, he grabbed a knife and kept fighting. He saved his comrade and held off over 24 German soldiers alone. For his bravery, the French awarded him the Croix de Guerre, one of their highest military honors. But back home in America, he returned to racism, poverty, and silence. The US didn't even give him a medal until 100 years later. When the Harlem Hellfighters finally came home in 1919, they marched through New York City to a thunder of applause. Thousands lined the streets of Harlem to celebrate their heroes, but the joy didn't last. Many returned to discrimination, denied jobs, and faced violence during the Red Summer of 1919, the same year they came back. They had fought for democracy overseas, but had to keep fighting for dignity at home. Still, they stood proud, because they knew what they had done. They had proved that courage has no color, and that patriotism can live even in a nation that doesn't always love you back. The Harlem Hellfighters' legacy lives on. Their music, jazz, spread across Europe during the war, inspiring a new sound. Their bravery inspired generations of black soldiers who followed. And their name became a symbol of strength, honor, and resilience. More than 100 years later, the world still remembers them, not for the country they served, but for the courage they carried. The Harlem Hellfighters didn't fight for recognition. They fought for freedom and became legends instead. In the skies over war-torn Europe, a group of young black men flew with precision, pride, and power. They were called the Tuskegee Airmen, America's first all-black military pilots. But before they could fly for freedom, they had to fight for the right to fly at all. In the 1940s, the U.S. military was segregated. Black men were told they weren't intelligent or disciplined enough to fly planes. The idea of a black pilot was seen as a joke to many. But at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, a bold experiment began. The U.S. Army Air Corps agreed to train black pilots, not because they believed in them, but to prove they couldn't succeed. Instead, they created heroes. The men trained under scorching Alabama heat, facing racism every step of the way. White officers doubted them. Supplies were short. Even their success was met with suspicion. But the Tuskegee Airmen, they didn't quit. Through sweat, discipline, and relentless determination, they mastered the skies. Their motto became clear: aim high. When they were finally deployed to Europe, they painted the tails of their P-51 Mustangs bright red and became known as the Red Tails. They escorted bombers across dangerous enemy zones, missions that required absolute precision. White bomber crews at first didn't trust them, but after mission, something changed. Because the Red Tails never lost a single bomber they were assigned to protect. Their discipline and skill earned them respect from the same people who once doubted their worth. While they fought Nazi planes in Europe, they also fought racism back home. Even after their victories, when they returned to America, they were still denied entry to officers' clubs, still forced to sit in the back of buses, but they didn't stop fighting. Their courage in the air sparked a movement on the ground, helping pave the way for the civil rights movement that followed. President Harry Truman would later desegregate the U.S. military in 1948, influenced by what the Tuskegee Airmen had proven, that excellence has no color. They weren't just pilots, they were pioneers. They flew higher than their country's expectations and shattered every racist lie about what black men could do. The Tuskegee Airmen taught us something timeless. True power isn't about what others think you can do. It asks about what you prove you can. In a world that told her she couldn't fly, she learned how to soar anyway. This is the story of Bessie Coleman, the first black woman pilot in the world and a dreamer who turned the sky into her battlefield for equality. Bessie was born in 1892 in a small town in Texas. Her parents were sharecroppers, descendants of enslaved people and Native Americans. Life was hard, picking cotton, walking miles to a one-room schoolhouse, facing poverty and racism every single day. But from the moment she saw a plane fly overhead, something inside her changed. She decided, one day I'm going to fly. People laughed. A black woman pilot? In 1910's America? Impossible. But Bessie didn't ask for permission. She prepared for takeoff. No flight schools in the United States would accept her, not because she wasn't smart enough, but because she was black and a woman. So Bessie taught herself French, saved every penny from working as a manicurist and laundress, and sailed all the way to France in 1920. There, she trained at the Caudron Brothers School of Aviation, learning to fly in an open cockpit biplane where one mistake could mean death. But she never flinched. She mastered it. And in 1921, Bessie Coleman earned her Pilot S license, becoming the first black woman in the world to do so. When she returned to America, Bessie became a sensation, performing at air shows across the country. She looped, rolled, and dived through the sky, wearing a leather jacket, goggles, and her fearless smile. They called her Brave Bessie and Queen Bess, but she wasn't just flying for fame, she was flying for freedom. She refused to perform at any air show that excluded black people. She told reporters, "I refuse to take part in any exhibition that is not open to the colored." She dreamed of opening a flight school for black pilots, so no one else would have to go to another country to chase their dreams. In 1926, while preparing for a show in Jacksonville, Florida, Bessie went up for a test flight. Her plane malfunctioned. She fell from 2,000 feet. She died instantly. She was only 34 years old. The woman who refused to be grounded met her end in the sky she loved most. But Bessie Coleman's story didn't end there. She inspired generations of black aviators, from the Tuskegee Airmen to today, black pilots who still whisper her name before takeoff. Every time a young girl of color looks up and says, "I want to be a pilot," Bessie's dream lives on. Because she didn't just fly, she opened the sky for everyone who came after her. Before computers could think, there was a woman who could. Her name was Katherine Johnson, a math genius whose talent helped America reach the stars. Katherine was born in 1918 in a small town in West Virginia. From a young age, numbers just made sense to her. Like a language she was born knowing. At only 13, she was already in high school. By 18, she graduated from college at the top of her class. But back then, very few women were given the chance to work in science. Katherine never let that stop her. She believed her gift could help change what was possible. In 1953, Katherine began working as a mathematician at what would become NASA. She was part of a team of brilliant minds known as the Human Computers. Their job was to check flight paths, orbits, and trajectories, calculations that needed absolute perfection. In 1962, astronaut John Glenn prepared for a mission to orbit Earth. He wanted Katherine to confirm the new computer S numbers by hand because he trusted her more than the machine. She checked every calculation, every formula, every variable. Her work ensured the mission's success. And when John Glenn's capsule returned safely, history was made. Throughout her career, Katherine worked on projects that shaped modern space travel, including the Apollo 11 mission that first landed on the moon. Her brilliance opened doors for countless others in science and technology. She showed that determination, focus, and faith in your talent can lift you higher than anyone expects. Katherine Johnson retired after more than 30 years at NASA. Her calculations helped launch dreams into space, and her story inspired generations around the world. In 2015, she was honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and her story reached millions through the film Hidden Figures. She proved that intelligence knows no boundaries, that quiet strength can change history, and that the greatest power is believing in what your mind can do. Once upon a time, there was a woman who turned struggle into strength and dreams into an empire. Her name was Madam C.J. Walker, an entrepreneur, inventor, and the first self-made female millionaire in America. She was born Sarah Breedlove in 1867 in Louisiana. She faced many challenges early in life. She lost her parents young and worked hard just to survive. By her 20s, she was washing clothes by hand for a living. But even then, she had something powerful: hope and determination. Over time, her hair began to fall out from stress and harsh products. Instead of giving up, Sarah started to experiment, mixing oils and natural ingredients in her kitchen. What began as a small experiment soon became a breakthrough. Her formula made women feel confident again. And with that, a dream was born. She renamed herself Madam C.J. Walker, a name that would soon travel across the country. Madam Walker started selling her products door to door, teaching women how to care for their hair and believe in themselves. Her warmth and confidence inspired others. She didn't just sell beauty, she sold self-worth and independence. She trained thousands of women as sales agents, giving them jobs and opportunities that changed their lives. Soon, her company grew into a national brand. She built factories, schools, and beauty colleges, a network of empowerment at a time when few women ran businesses. By 1910, she was a millionaire. But her greatest wealth wasn't in money, it was in the people she uplifted. Madam C.J. Walker used her success to help others. She donated to education, supported communities, and inspired future entrepreneurs. She once said, "I had to make my own living and my own opportunity. Don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. Get up and make them." Her story reminds us that you can rise from any circumstance, if you have faith, vision, and the courage to keep going. Imagine driving across America, not knowing where you could safely stop to eat, sleep, or rest. For many travelers in the mid-1900s, that was reality. But one man decided to change that. His name was Victor Hugo Green, and his idea saved lives, a simple book that became a symbol of safety and freedom. In 1936, Victor Green, a postal worker from New York, noticed how difficult it was for certain travelers to move freely across the country. Many hotels and restaurants turned people away, so he began collecting information, names of friendly places where travelers could rest, eat, and stay without worry. He published his list in a small green booklet, calling it the Negro Motorist Green Book. Soon it spread from hand to hand, a quiet guide for safe passage on the open road. The Green Book listed hotels, gas stations, diners, and private homes that welcomed everyone with kindness. For families, it meant safety. For business travelers, it meant freedom. For dreamers and explorers, it meant the ability to keep going, and no matter what. Every year, the book grew thicker, filled with new safe places from one coast to another. It wasn't just a guide. It was a lifeline. By the 1950s, the Green Book was used by millions of travelers. Families could plan road trips, visit loved ones, and explore the country with more confidence. It became a quiet act of independence, a way to move forward in a world that often tried to hold people back. And every time someone opened that green booklet, they were reminded that kindness still existed. Victor Green passed away before seeing how much his idea changed lives. But his vision continued long after, a reminder that one person's idea can make the world safer and more connected. Today, the Green Book is remembered not just as a travel guide, but as a symbol of courage, unity, and hope. The Green Book reminds us that even the smallest idea, written in kindness and courage, can travel further than we ever imagine. Victor Green didn't just write a book. He wrote a roadmap for resilience. In 1961, a group of young men and women decided to take a journey that would test their courage and change history. They weren't soldiers or politicians. They were students, teachers, and dreamers. People who believed that peaceful action could create real change. They called themselves the Freedom Riders. The Freedom Riders set out on buses traveling through the American South. Their goal was simple: to see if the law of equality on buses and public travel was truly being followed. They wanted to ride together, side by side, and show that unity should never depend on skin color or background. It was a peaceful mission, but a powerful one. These travelers knew the risks. They knew that not everyone would welcome what they stood for, but they kept going. Town after town, mile after mile. They sang songs of hope. They carried no weapons, only words and faith. And every mile they traveled became a message that love is stronger than hate and courage is louder than fear. As the rides continued, more people joined. Some faced hostility, some faced danger, but their spirit never broke. The Freedom Riders were not trying to fight. They were trying to be seen, to be heard, and to remind the world that unity takes bravery. Their courage caught the attention of the nation. New laws were reinforced to protect equal rights in public travel. The Freedom Riders changed the direction of history. Their journey inspired thousands to take peaceful action and believe that one small group can spark something much bigger. They proved that real change begins with ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The Freedom Riders taught us that progress comes from courage. They rode for equality, for hope, and for every generation that would follow. Their story reminds us, when you stand up for what is right, even on the hardest road, you move the whole world forward.
Have you ever heard of a woman who invented a way to restore people's sight, but the world almost never gave her credit? Her name was Dr. Patricia Bath. Born in 1942 in Harlem, New York, a little black girl who dreamed not just of seeing the stars, but helping others see them too. While studying medicine, she noticed something heartbreaking. Black patients were going blind twice as often as white patients, not because their eyes were weaker, but because the system was unfair. So she made it her mission to fight blindness and bias at the same time. And in 1986, she invented the laser phaco probe, a laser device that made cataract surgery faster, safer, and restored vision to people who had been blind for years. She became the first black woman doctor to hold a medical patent. Dr. Bath once said, "Do not allow your mind to be imprisoned by fear. Break out and fly. Because of her, millions can see again." And her story proves one truth: brilliance has no color. In 1960, a 6-year-old girl took one small walk that changed the world. Her name was Ruby Bridges, and her bravery opened the doors of education for generations to come. Ruby was chosen to attend a school that had never welcomed children of color before. She was only 6 years old, too young to fully understand the weight of her journey, but brave enough to take each step with her head held high. Every morning, she walked to class with federal marshals beside her. Inside, she was often the only student in her classroom. Yet, she smiled, studied, and learned, proving that peace and patience can break barriers no one thought possible. Ruby loved learning. Her teacher, Mrs. Henry, taught her alone for an entire year, and the two formed a friendship built on kindness and respect. Even at such a young age, Ruby's calm strength showed the world that education is worth standing up for. Photos of Ruby walking to school became a symbol of hope. Artists, writers, and families around the country began to share her story. Ruby's courage reminded everyone that change begins with the smallest acts of bravery. Sometimes, even from a child with a backpack and a dream. Ruby grew up to become an advocate for education and equality. Her foundation now helps children find strength through learning and compassion. She once said, "Don't follow the path. Go where there is no path and start a trail." Her steps at 6 years old didn't just lead her to school. They led the world toward understanding and unity. Ruby Bridges reminds us that bravery has no age, that even the smallest person can create the biggest change. She didn't just go to school. She made history, one brave step at a time.